How to Create a Glitch Monologues Season 17 Chapter 6. This is Season 17 of How to Create a Glitch in the Matrix Monologues Episode 6. In this episode, we will be talking about the structure of gateways and their hierarchy. Now, in a previous episode we talked about how the grasping release is the zeroth gate. What this means is that it is the null form of a gateway, it is the absence of a gateway, the zeroth form, which reflects no common feeling with another. For it is possible to have a common feeling relative to some object if you possess it, i.e. hold it in your hand, just as it is possible to have a common feeling relative to some object if you release it, i.e. let go of a held object so that it falls to the floor. But, in accomplishing both, there is no object with which the gateway may be formed relative to. Now, the significance of it being the first kind of gateway, or rather its absence, suggests that there may be other forms and at least two other forms following it, grasping and releasing. And thus, it can be said that the first gate is the grasping of an object. The second gate is the releasing of an object. Now, in another previous episode we talked about how intellectual attachment produces physical acts of possession. The grasping of the first gate entails a possession or attachment relative to some object. The releasing of the second gate represents the elimination of negation of that possession. The third form of gateway is the association. Just as you can hold one object in one hand and another object in the other hand, so too can you hold two attachments at the same time, while those attachments are physically represented as associations. Now, once an object is grasped, possessed, held, attached, it can be manipulated according to the forms of spatial transformation, namely, rotation, reflection and dilation. These are second-degree gateways because they require the first gate as a prerequisite. Now, these five forms of gateway produce a veritable abundance of feelings relative to objects which might produce mirroring and/or a common orientation to the object. And thus, these five forms of gateway correspond to each form of plate, beginning with the five spatial plates and ascending to the emotional, archetypal, symbolic and esoteric. The basic vocabulary of gendered nouns in most languages corresponds to the personal being attached to objects. But the personal reflexive doesn't exist without these five forms of gateway. As stated, possession of an intellectual object manifests as handling in the plate of the hands. Now, the gateways corresponding to each plate, as set out in the complete series, have connections between them as well. The 9 plates represent a distinct dimension to the 5 forms of gate. Each plate contains the same 5 forms of gate, only they manifest differently as one proceeds from spatial to esoteric. For example, the plate of the hands manifests possession as the holding of an object. But the plate of the face, eyes, ears and nose manifests it as one's attention being fixed on the object. Each plate uses these 5 forms of gate. Given actors are segregated by their common gates, into classes, which become stratified as individuals age. Likewise, the various forms of syntax in language conceal the forms and hierarchy of gates. That's the end of the podcast for today. If you enjoyed it, please like, comment and subscribe.